And we might speed through the first part a little bit, because the whole point here is to hear you guys out and to understand what the challenges are, so that we can maybe share our creative feedback with some stuff. Excuse me. So
Okay.
you know who we are, Brittany Dowdle and Linda Ruggeri. I'm a nonfiction editor based out of Los Angeles. I've been with EFA for about 4 or 5 years now, and Brittany initially invited me to join the diversity initiative so that I could get my hands onto projects and participate and get to know people. And that was kind of the jumpstart of my networking experience. And after that, we got invited to direct the Welcome program. And I've been doing that for a few years. Brittany helped me for the first year. And that's kind of how we got started. And Brittany, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Just really quick, I'm a full-time freelance editor as well. I've been an EFA member for about 12 years, and I was one of the founding members of the Diversity Initiative, and that was kind of around when I met Linda and pulled her in to help me with some volunteer work and some projects. And I would say that was probably about year 5 or 6 of my editing career. But I really count my growing my network from that period, from when I really got involved with volunteering with the EFA. It's just been the people that I've met and finding that comfortable way to work with other people, because I'm an introvert, has been so key to growing the network that I have today. So that's part of, we just wanted to come and share some of that. And we know that you're all academic editors, and we have some good friends and colleagues who are academic editors. So we wanted to share a bit about our process, our approach to networking, but also taking into consideration maybe some of your specific challenges in that niche and in that field.
And one of the things that I want to say, it's not like one day we woke up and we were like, oh, we know everything about networking, let's write a book about it. No, very much no. It was based on seeing the stuff that we were seeing in the Welcome program over and over again, the stuff that people were telling us, like, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. Why is this so hard? Why am I not getting clients? I want to move into a different, and so we noticed after the first session, like, wow, people kind of have the same like things that I'm asking myself. And then the second session went around and there were kind of the same questions. And at the end of the day, we all want basically the same things. We want to be able to do work that we're passionate about, that we like doing. We want to work with clients that pay on time and that, pay the rate that we feel we deserve. We want to be able to save for retirement. So we all kind of have the same, at least a general path that we all want to be on. And we're all kind of doing our own thing and trying to get there on our own. And it's so much easier when everybody shares, this is how I'm doing it. How are you doing it? Oh, this works for me. Let's walk together on our own path, but together so we can get there quicker and in a way that's more efficient. So that's how the book came about. Everything in the book is true. It's stuff that either we've experienced, some of you have experienced, and there's a lot of interviews with editors telling kind of how they use networking or how it's benefited them. So let me tell you about the presentation goals. And Brittany, is this my slide? This is my slide, right?
Linda, are you sharing the slide? Because I'm not seeing it, but it might just be the setting that I have.
Oh, no. Okay. So is that
okay,
better? Yeah?
Perfect.
Okay.
So these are the presentation goals. You missed the first slide, though, where Brittany is a motorcycle rider and she has her cat ear helmet. And these are my Christmas antlers for the holidays. So the presentation goals for today, by the end of the presentation, what we are hoping that you'll get, and you might have seen this at other presentations because it's a very similar framework that we use, is that you'll be able to redefine what networking means. You'll be able to identify your current network, which is kind of like a reality check of who you're surrounding yourself with right now and who you think you might need to be surrounding yourself with. We hope that you'll be able to set achievable goals and that you will be able to evaluate how the people that you have in your network and the goals that you have for yourself can work together.
Okay, and so this is just a really quick summary of our presentation structure for today. We are going to have our presentation, which is kind of our prepared remarks. Then we're going to get into a bit of guided group sharing and Q&A. I think that one of the most helpful things is when you can really ask questions, share what your challenges are, or what you're trying to accomplish right now. And so we really want to save some time to get into that and give you a chance to kind of share and get some feedback.
Awesome.
Okay, so before we dive into the question of how to network in a way that gets results, we always like to take a moment to clarify what we feel the networking is and what it isn't. And this may be a little bit different from what you're used to, but it's based on our experiences networking in the publishing and editing industry. So networking is one of those things that we all know we should do, right? It's one of the first things people will suggest to us when we ask questions like, how can I get more clients? How can I, get that dream project? But a lot of times when we think about the actual work that we have to do as part of networking, we think of something kind of like these dry definitions that we have from Merriam-Webster, like the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions. And anytime I read that definition, I always feel like it should be read in like a robot voice because it feels very just sort of dry, and it doesn't make you want to go out there and network. And when I was first starting out as an editor a little over 12 years ago, this idea of traditional networking, and this kind of dry sort of formulaic way of doing it was really intimidating to me. And part of that's because I'm an introvert, and part of it is because I just didn't think that I would be good at doing the normal networking activities that you have to do in order to create a successful network for yourself. But Linda, would you switch our page? Thank you. But we've learned, and we continue to learn, to network in a way that is different, that's much more relaxed and authentic. And it isn't centered on what we need, but it's centered on building community. And I just wanted to stop right there and go back to something Linda said earlier about in writing our book on networking, on teaching others to network, we're still learning. It's not like we have some perfected understanding of it. And that's why one of the reasons we love doing these kinds of presentations and asking questions and hearing from others is because we are still learning. And that's kind of the whole goal of, or the heart of our approach, is that we learn together and that we reach our goals together. And so this approach is what's given us really great long-lasting results, because it's about building your network through building community and helping one another.
So I'll hop in and say that when we reframe our way of networking, when we look at it from a different perspective, not the way that we're used to learning about it, whether it be in school or through books or through what we see other very successful people doing, what we like to see is that there's a lot of other activities that count as networking and that are different maybe than what we've been told. And so that includes things like, volunteering, community building. Networking should not be transactional. It can't be that every time I need something from you, that's when I decide to give you something because I need something in return. Networking is helping others. It is based on trust. The stronger relationships you can build are, based on trust. And those are the ones that are going to last longer. And when there's trust, opportunities arise and people keep you in their mind. When that next project comes up and they can't take it on, it'll be like, oh, Brittany might be interested in that, or she would be a perfect person for that instead of me.
Right.
Networking should be genuine and should be organic. You shouldn't feel like you're putting on another persona to be out there, and you don't have to be fake. You can be yourself. You can be authentic. In fact, I feel it's so much more interesting and successful when you are authentic. And networking is not a one-stop shop. So it's not that you're going to, connect with someone on LinkedIn today and then, oh my God, I'm done. I've already connected with Brittany or with Linda or with Carrie, and now work shall come pouring in. No, it's about connecting with Brittany and Linda, but also being like, hey, have you seen this? Or did you hear about this conference? Or I'm really looking forward, you know, to, I don't know, doing this other activity or taking this class that you recommended. Build that relationship slowly and naturally, and you know, in a way that's natural for you. So also, I'm sure you've all been in experiences where you're like, that doesn't feel like networking, or that's not really networking, is it? Because a rewarding network is built on cultivating relationships. It's a give and a take, and there's going to be tangible benefits, but it has to be organic. And anything that's organic, and if any of you buy organic stuff, you know that things take time to grow. It takes time to cultivate them. You've got to, you know, water them with clean water, and you got to prepare the soil. And usually that takes much longer than the thing actually growing and producing. If any of you are gardeners like me. So, you know, things take time, but the sooner you start and the more consistent you are, the more results you're going to have. So when we say, you know, that now we have a better idea about networking, we're going to talk about specifically some of the unique challenges in the academic area, and how that's going to affect your approach to networking. And I'll quickly say that when we were at EFA Con, we met a lot of you there, and it was just great to put names to faces. And when we were discussing, like, okay, what's coming up for you guys? What do you, and you know, people pour out what are the situations that they're facing and what happens in academic editing, which is really very, very different of what happens in fiction, you know, editing, or in nonfiction editing that's not academic. I really feel like you guys are in a lane that's a lot more complicated or stressful than some of us other editors. So we really want to address that.
Okay, so in talking with, as Linda said, some of our colleagues who specialize in academic editing, and also based on some of our own experiences, not necessarily as academic editors, but I recently have had a couple of experiences writing for a journal. And so as the author, that was kind of a different experience for me, and we might touch on that a bit later. But we wanted to take these extra nuances that you're dealing with into consideration, and kind of look at how that might color when you're networking in this field. So some of the things that the other editors that we know have talked about, some of the challenges that they've faced whenever they're networking, is things like some of the egos involved. That can be something to contend with at times. What are the expectations between you and your client and the publisher or the journal, or the program if you're working with students, and is everyone on the same page? English as a second language, because definitely just having the kind of the language barrier or cultural differences, it can take that comes to another level of work, and another thing that you need to take into consideration. Submission guidelines and budgets and timelines. So when I first talk about all of that, you may think, well, that doesn't really, that's not networking. But what we wanted to talk about is that whether you're at a conference, meeting potential clients, talking with other editors, whether you're copy editing a research paper, whatever you're doing in your capacity as an editor, how we communicate in every situation is a part of our networking. So we're going to, I guess, offer some solutions, some alternative perspectives, so that you can handle those challenges and let that inform your overall approach to networking and communicating in your niche.
So if you look at this list and nothing resonates for you, okay, but if something does, if any of those are things that you're dealing with or you've dealt with, could you like pop it in the chat? Because I'd like to see a little bit about how common this experience is amongst all of us, and see, it'll inform a little bit more what some of these answers might be, or solutions, or tactics at least, to deal with this thing. So let's look at the next one. so these are the challenges that we just talked about. And we wanted to offer maybe, what if we stepped out of that mindset and saw them as those challenges? And then what if we did a 180 and we look at them from another point of view? And maybe I put myself in the writer's position, or I put myself in the journal managing, editing position. And what are the things that I'm juggling with to make sure that I can get my paper out there? And what would help me, what would be the best attitude to have for some of these things? So, tenure egos are a thing around the world. It's not a US thing. It's not a California, it's around the world. And I'm not going to go into the history of tenure egos, but it's not new. It's been happening forever. It's going to continue to happen probably for a very long time. So there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is that we can own our professionalism, and we can own our skills and what we know to be true and what we know works and what we need to do. Another thing that can help is a lot of times, and I'll bring this quick example. For the Los Angeles chapter, the EFA chapter meeting about 2 years ago, we hosted it at the Loyola Marymount University Graduate School of Writing. And so it was the graduate program. We invited the published professors who were literature professors, I think. And so all of them had published 1 or 2 books. And we had EFA editors there, and we were having a panel just discussing. And we talked about what was the biggest challenges for them. Because here you have writers who know how to edit and who are published professionals. And they all, like every single one of them, said that when the publication company or the publishing house told them they were going to be assigned an editor, they didn't understand why. Because why would I need an editor? I'm a writer. I have a graduate degree. I write perfectly. There's no need for anybody to edit my work. And just being completely dumbfounded that why would somebody come to correct their perfectly written work. And it wasn't until they started working with an editor and it was explained to them why their work kind of needed to be interpreted, maybe put into a little bit more plain language for the target audience. So some of them had gone from, publishing important academic papers to writing their first novel, and there was a complete disconnect because the audiences are completely different. The language is completely different. The genre has certain things that has to be followed. And so it was a very big ego reality check for them. And knowing that maybe another way of approaching, our work in editing when you're working with academics is, can you explain what the editing process is going to be like? Can you explain what the timeline is going to be like? I like to explain with some of my clients, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to read the manuscript from beginning to end without doing anything. And then I have to go back and I'm going to, I'll take the most important notes. Then I'm going to address, all the grammar and all the punctuation. Then I'm going to make sure, you're following the guidelines that the journal has. So when you take the time to explain the work that you're going to do, and it doesn't have to be, a testament, it can just be very short that these are the steps I'm going to take, and does that work for you? Do you think, is there anything that you'd like me to add to my revision process? That's a way of doing it. It's going to take me X amount of hours because, for example, I cannot edit more than 4 hours on the same subject every day because I lose perspective. So you can explain why you take time or how long it's going to take you. And you only have to do this once when it's a new client, because once they get the hang of it, of how you work, they'll know what to expect. Be an informed editor. And this is something I see a lot actually, where there are editors that limit their work to just the copy editing, but they've never taken the time to understand how the book publishing process works, whether traditionally or indie publishing or book, self-publishing. Or maybe you haven't taken the time to understand how, the steps that a paper goes through to get published into a medical journal. It's really important, not that you're going to be doing that yourself, but it's really important to understand what those steps are, because then you're in the shoes of the author and of the publisher, and you know all the things that have to be met. And all of a sudden you realize your job is just not to be a copy editor. You are part of a very important team to get that work out there and published. So the more you understand the publication process, the more that can help you in how you work and in having empathy for the client. And I know that having empathy with a client is not always something we strive for, but you need to be able to understand the client so that you know how you can provide the best service possible for them. I always, when I have clients that are detached or distanced or are being guarded, the first thing I try to like let down that guard is, how do you think I can help you? What do you think? What would you like for me to do for your work? What do I bring to the table? What do you need me to bring to the table? And all of a sudden, then that tells the writer that you're on their team, that you're there to elevate their work. Or if the work is already elevated, you're just there to make sure that there are no typos and that everything is their message is being received the way they intended it to be. And then another strategy, which is good, is to implement reflection. How many of you are familiar with like reflection? I don't know what it's called, technique, strategy. I can't really. So if you've ever been to couples therapy, reflection is about repeating what the other person is saying. And it's just so that you can hear it again. And that the other person understands that you understand what they're telling you. So reflection, if somebody's saying, I need this paper by Thursday, the kind of, reflection would be like, so what you're telling me is that it's very important for you to have this paper by Thursday in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. So just repeating back to the client what they've told you, whether in that, it doesn't have to be verbally, it can be by email, just because the client needs to see that and understand that you've understood what they're asking you. And sometimes when the client hears that back, they're like, oh no, that's not what I meant. What I meant is I actually know it's fine, as long as I have it by Friday morning. So that reflection technique it takes 2 seconds to do, and it can really solidify a good working relationship. And the last thing is to query with nuance. There was a discussion list recently, I don't know on which of all the discussion lists, where there was an editor who was very upset with her client. I think it was an academic project because the client would not abide to their corrections. And it was like some minor comma. It was it was minor. It was minor to me. It was just a dispute over 2 or 3 punctuation things that the author did not want to budge on. And the copy editor kind of removed themselves from the project because of that, because they would not stand for that comma not being there. And I thought, okay, but what was the problem? Like, this is the client. If the client is paying you, they've established the terms, they're comfortable with that comma. It's not your work, it's the author's voice. Maybe sometimes it's okay to let that one go. And again, have you queried with nuance? And when I mean nuance, Brittany, do you have the book there handy? Ebony's book?
I don't have the book itself because I have 2 of it in ebook form, but I don't have the paper copy.
Okay, so I have one on my shelf and I'll go get it when I go to the next slide. But basically, querying with nuance is a framework that Ebony Gassine-Wilkins, who's an EFA member, developed. And there are these 5 things, these 5 steps that you should take when you're having a query and asking a query. And it's to help the author feel understood, and to clarify, in a gentle way what you're asking them to do and why you're asking them to do it. But at the end of the day, it's a decision of the author. I'm going to put a link to the book. It's available on bookshop.org. I'm going to put a link to the book in the chat as soon as Brittany hops on. So let's go to the next one. Oh, this is me too. Sorry. Okay. Additional recommendations. Develop listening skills. Hear the client out. Pick up what they're actually asking you for. Be honest with yourself. What am I actually being asked to do in this project? I have been told at the beginning of my editing career once or twice, your work is great, but some of this stuff we didn't ask you to do. And thank you, but we didn't need this. That's embarrassing to me because I felt like, oh, I'm just going to go the extra mile and I'm going to correct and I'm going to make this, this comment here about this work could be replaced with this instead. That was not my job on the project. My job was to do the copy edit. And I was told that by 2 different publishers who I still work with and by another fellow editor who told me, you do great work, but you don't need to do all that stuff because that's not what they're asking you. And I was like, here I thought I was going the extra mile and, garnering brownie points, and no, and that did not go that way. That's not what they wanted from me. What am I being asked to do? channel the great Hester Hickton. Do any of you know who Hester Hickton is? So I have not met her in person. She's a member of the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading in the UK. I took a class with her that it's phenomenal and I highly recommend, called Efficient Editing. I think it's maybe one of the best classes I took that reduced my editing time by a third because of what I learned of how she recommends and how she teaches to do efficient editing. And Hester, so this is Hester right here. I stole her thumbnail image from the website. And I borrowed this quote because I want her to get more people to take her classes. But she asked us at the beginning of this class, always think about, what does the client want? What does the reader want? And what does the material need? And sometimes those are three very different things. And the author is not probably going to know or be aware that these are three different things. And you aren't either until you ask these questions. And this might be a good thing to discuss with your client.
What is the name of that person?
Her name is, it's right here, Hester Hickton.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And I'm
I
going to
was
put a
listening.
link to the class too. So
Okay.
if you do take the class, tell her that Linda has her in a slide and that she's amazing because she's just wonderful. So, you know, what does the client want? What does the reader want? What does the material need? Rely on the support also of your close network. Ask for help. I know because of the conversations we had with some of you that asking for help to other editors is kind of like admitting I don't know what I'm doing. And that's totally okay to admit I don't know what I'm doing and that I need help because it's only going to happen once. But ask for help. People are happy to help. Fellow editors are happy to lend a hand and share ideas and thoughts, even if they might not know what the answer is. Together, you can brainstorm and come to a solution. Know your crucial place in the project. Again, know why you're there on the project. Always try to end on a good note. Not every project is a dream project. Not every project is a client you want to have again. Totally fine. But end it on a good note because your name is out there. One of the things that we know about academic editing is that once you get into the system and you become known, people will come back to you over and over again, especially in university arenas. So end on a good note, even if you're not, you know, that's not your dream client and, you know, you would never work with them again. You don't have to work with them again, but you might work with one of their colleagues. And that's only going to happen if you end on a good note. Okay, that was a lot to process. That was a lot of reality checks and how things happen, but we're going to move this into a more growth direction now. So, Brittany.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, and you know, one of the reasons that we wanted to talk about those particular issues, especially as they apply to editors who are editing academic work, is that relationships are so key to networking, whether it's relationships with other editors, with clients, with publishers. And when you have these types of challenges, it can really impact your ability to keep those relationships strong, keep them positive, and incorporate everything and kind of reconcile all these challenges with your day-to-day work. So I hope that some of those tips that Linda shared will help in that regard, because next, now that we've had some time to think about, you know, what complicates networking in academia, now we're going to focus on the steps that will help us to recenter our efforts and give us a simple framework to use when we're networking. And so for that, we're coming back to our RISE framework. And so it's okay. And we're going to in the next couple of, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the two parts of our network, our goals, and then how we bring it all together to actually build community around ourselves. And community is really just another word for network. Okay, now Linda. All right. So whether we edit fiction, memoir, or academic texts, it's important to know our starting place and to map out where we want to go in terms of building our network and also the direction that we want to take our careers in. Some of you may have been doing academic editing for a long time. You're very happy there. You just want to keep it focused on the academic. Maybe some of you are transitioning into academic editing from something else, or maybe you want to add another type of editing in the mix so you have a bit more variety in your work. I was actually talking with an editor who I think is combining academic editing. She's kind of having a dual niche. So it's academic editing on one side and it's literary fiction on the other. And I think that's a great way of doing things because it does give you that variety and it brings in new perspectives. But regardless of where you are and if you're just focusing on academic editing or not, the first part of our process is to take kind of a snapshot of the two networks that we each have. One is our small, close network. And as you can see, I'm a cat person. So we have our nice little, our little group of cats, of kittens in a safe space, you know, where you feel comfortable. And then we've got like every cat on the planet there. And they don't all, some of them look kind of intimidating. That's our broad, varied network. Sometimes we're not really comfortable venturing out there, but there's a lot of benefit to be had in having both of these networks and making sure that they're both strong and they're both aligned with the direction we want to go in. So the small network includes the people that we talk with on a daily or weekly basis. These are people we have a really high level of trust with. They're colleagues that we can go to with questions, knowing that we're not going to be judged. And likewise, when they come to us with questions, we're not going to judge them. We're just going to help them get the answers so that they can find success and move forward. Quite often, these are fellow editors. Our broader network includes people like clients who might refer work to us, speakers we've connected with at conferences, or maybe just people that we only talk with occasionally. There's also a different level of closeness and familiarity there. So maybe some of your clients are in your broader network, you're not super close with them, but you have a good working relationship. And that idea of having a good working relationship goes back to what Linda was just talking about how we can maintain that relationship and how that connects to networking, why it's so important. So let's see. Linda, can we have the next slide? Oh, is it down there?
Sorry, I was gonna say that if you do have our book, the current, so we have usually worksheets on this page, but because we wanted to get to other things here, it's on page 25 and 26. It's where you can fill out the broad, your small trusted network and your broad network. And if you're on the, if you have the ebook, you can still find it under, it's in chapter 1, actually chapter 2. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next thing that's part of our RISE framework is goal setting. And you might be wondering, you know, why we're talking about goals in a networking discussion, because we typically talk about goals in something like, or goal setting in things like financial forecasts or productivity workshops. But in a networking context, goals can really serve as a compass and point us towards the people, the organizations, and the activities that will build our network. So that's why we have these questions here. Oops.
Oh, did I go too fast? Sorry.
Where do I want to be in 6 months? And what do I need to learn, gain, or improve to get to the next level in my business? These are just some of the questions that you can use as sort of starters to get you into that goal framework, that goal mindset. So often we are just really focused on our day-to-day work and we don't take that time to project goals and forecast. I feel like this is just a really easy, 2 simple questions to ask yourself maybe after we get off the call and start to work in that goal mindset. Okay. Then, we like to view networking then as a source for solutions. It can really help us in tangible ways, like by providing us with community and a support network, but it can also help in very concrete ways by helping us to build the knowledge that we need to reach our goals, by leading us to new opportunities. But in order to position ourselves so that we can really get those results and reach those goals, we have to make sure that our networking is in line with goals. So here are some of the questions that we like to ask. One, is my small trusted network supporting my goals? Does my broad network reflect my long-term goals? And the reason we like to use these questions is that they help really tie those two ideas together. The idea of what is my current network, and then where am I trying to go, and how I can get those two running in parallel so that they're actually working together and multiplying the effectiveness of any networking that I do.
So we're going to open it up to group sharing in a second. I do want to fast forward in case some of you have to go, that we do have free resources and some course information on networkingforeditors.com. We just completed doing a beta test of the course that's based, it's networking for freelance editors based on the first part of our book. And it went really well. And we are debating whether having a course for academic editors only to go through the book together with some guest speakers. We don't know if there's an interest in that. If there is an interest, I'm going to put our email address there so you can email us, and maybe we're planning on having a small cohort of about 10 to 12 people at a time, work through the first part of the book, get onto, presentation skills, network, small networks, broad network, and just go through the exercises together with some additional material. So if that's something that interests you, Brittany, can you type our info address in the chat? That's one thing. And the other thing too is that if you don't have the book and you would like the book, there is a 15% discount code, which is this one here, and we'll type that in the chat as well. And this is when you buy it through our website. So if it's a paperback, I'll ship it. I can sign and dedicate it and send it to you. If it's an ebook, you can get it on our site as well with that discount code. So let's go back to that guided group sharing. So in an hour, it's kind of impossible to cover every aspect of networking for, what it's like to network as an academic editor. But we hope that maybe we've found some common ground and we've been able to address some of the things that are happening in your world and in the line of work that you're in. We want to make sure that we're sensitive and that we're hearing you, and that if there's any challenges that you'd like to bring up or any thoughts that you have, we'd like to open the meeting up to sharing. Because I think the more we share and get to know how we're each working, it really can be helpful to everyone. So in terms of what you've seen or questions that you have, would anybody like to offer some insight or share what their challenges are right now, or if you've experienced this situation before? And I can even let Brittany talk. Do you want to talk about your very cool project quickly to open up maybe
Okay,
what
sure.
you're about to do?
I'll share first. So recently, I had the opportunity to write an article with my sister, who's a PA for a medical journal for PAs. This was the second article that we wrote. We were invited to come in and do it because they enjoyed our first article, and the process, the writing process was pretty straightforward. But I think they had some changes in terms of the company who was handling the publication and the editing and all of that. And it actually became very awkward. So when I talked to Linda, when we talked about doing this presentation and like what it can be like as an academic editor, I said, it's also interesting as an author in that situation, because on the one hand, we had the managing editor for the journal. Actually, there were two of them, and they were very encouraging, and they were completely behind us as authors. And they actually had invited us to come and write this article. So that was all great. But then when it went into what I think is a very rigid production edit or publication production system, it was very difficult in terms of we were being asked for things that didn't apply to the type of article that we were writing. But it was the editors and the project manager, I think, they were kind of constrained by what they had to abide by. And at one point there was like a flurry of of emails, and my sister and I basically just kind of stepped back, and we're like, we're not even getting involved, because it got very heated between people who were all very invested in the success of this particular journal, but they were coming at it from different positions. They had different histories, different stakes, and they also were guided by different sets of, I guess, rules and what was important to them. So in thinking about that, and thinking about, if I don't specialize in academic editing, I don't do academic editing, but it really gave me kind of empathy for all the moving parts that you are dealing with, and then how that can impact how you network. Because when there's friction in the editorial process, in the publication process, that makes it harder to then develop these strong relationships, whether it's with the authors, whether it's with the companies, managing editors, whoever it's with, or even with other editors. So that's my little story about being edited or in that situation. And I would definitely be interested to know, is it that bad, or or do you have sunshine and flower stories you can tell me to make me feel a little better about what it's like?
If you'd like to share your story, if you can click on that hand raising thing, or you can just raise your hand, and then I can give everyone access. And I don't know if I have everybody, but I'm able to see everybody here. Let me see. Okay, anyone, yes, Becky, if you, let me ask you to unmute your screen. There we go.
Unmute. Okay. I am, I was a lawyer for most of my life. And now I'm a partner in a copy editing and proofreading business. And we work for authors, and we also work for lawyers. And I'm trying to get into academia. But I don't really know. I can't find anywhere that tells me how to get into it, or where to even, I've like tried to get a hold of universities, or try to get a hold of, some way to attach to students to help with dissertations and stuff, but I can't get the universities to let me post anything or do anything. So I don't know what to do.
Okay. And if you were to narrow it down specifically to what kind of university, what kind of work you'd like to get, what would that be? Let's start there.
Well, if I was going to work for anybody that's that is a professor, I don't know if they're not teaching law or something that I really feel educated in, that I would be willing to do that. But I would really like to be involved in helping students with doing their dissertations, their thesis, they're getting into schools, that kind of stuff. That's
Perfect.
where I really would like to be as far as that's concerned.
So that's great, because I think that's how you kind of have to narrow it down. And I know a lot of, I see a lot of heads shaking. For those of you that do edit student dissertations at universities, how did you start?
Yeah.
What worked for you? I'd love to hear that. Linda Breslin, were you shaking your head? Maybe. Do you want to share what you've done, or how you got there?
Well, I'm sure I can take a lot more steps to really, get those contacts and network. But I ended up just having a university contact for a program. So instead of directly working with the students, I got contracted through the university to support an international cohort with their dissertation. So they have some kind of like an exchange program almost. And so that way I was able to edit for about 10 students throughout their process. But I'm looking for more of those kinds of opportunities but yeah, it's definitely challenging. I have the book and I really, jotted down ideas, and now I just need to actually take the steps to, get going with my networking.
May I ask
Awesome.
another question? Linda, how did you
Mhm.
get the universities to let you, where did you go to at the university to get them to let you do that?
I'd have to look back. I think either it was through the EFA, I think.
It was through
Most
the
likely, I
EFA?
think it was an EFA ad. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, and did that lead you to like the admissions or the, what department?
Through it's like the chair of a specific program
Oh,
within the
okay,
university.
I
Okay.
Yeah,
think
so I
that's
would
a
look
really,
into
yeah.
the fields that whichever
Yeah,
fields you
okay.
have experience in,
great,
Yeah.
the
I think
Thank
that's
you.
like a really great strategy is to contact research at the university, that you're interested in, research at the departments, research specifically the professors, and then reach out to every one of those professors in that department, introducing yourself as an editor. Your legal experience is going to be crucial here because you already know the stuff. And explain what you do and that you'd love to either have, a 15-minute. You can also offer like what we did was to go host like a 30-minute writing presentation or editing, how to self-edit your work to the students. And so
Oh,
professors are always looking for less time, I think, having to teach and letting other people teach. So it gives them a good break. That's another great way. And then writing centers. Every university has a writing center.
okay,
So going and throwing your name in there is, I think, and I think that personal connection, like if you go specifically to the writing center, you meet who runs the writing center, you tell them about the work that you're doing and the work that you want to be doing. And if they can, you can leave your business cards there, maybe they'll allow it for you to have a flyer. There's a lot of options. So does anybody, I see Sydney, you have your hand up. Would you like to add?
Yeah, hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, my video is just not working. Thanks so much for this presentation. It's really amazing to meet any other editors at all because I've been working in almost total isolation for about 12 years. Probably like some other people here, I was a research scientist, and I had a roommate at one point who mentioned that they did academic editing for a small startup company, and I've been working for that company and a bunch of others. Probably some of you are familiar with the experience of kind of being an Uber driver of editing, where someone offers you work, you sign a contract saying that you're never going to contact those scientists ever in your life, and then you don't build a network, and then 12 years later, ChatGPT comes along and you have to figure out something new. So I am curious if other people have had any luck breaking into the academic world, because that's what I am good at, and I just don't know how to make those connections. And I'm also a bit scared because I don't even know who some of the people that I've worked for are, but I've signed a contract saying that I won't reach out to them. So I feel like I've been put in this other weird category, but now I want to be like a real professional editor, but I've, I've lost a lot of time in terms of building a connection. So yeah, curious if anyone else has made that transition.
Anyone else that would, oh, Lindsay, yes.
Hi, so yeah, I'm very new. I worked in biology and labs for a long time, and I took time off with my kids. So basically what I started doing is emailing professors whose research is interesting, and I've gotten a couple that have gotten back to me, and I've edited 2 different things now. But basically it's like cold emails. And so that's why I'm reading your book, because it's just amazing. I don't know anything about networking, and so it helps so much to read about that stuff. But what I'm also doing is a copy editing test right now, just for a journal, one of these things that came up on Indeed, just an actual journal article. They do charge, they pay less than I could charge myself, but I don't even care because I need experience, and it's actually amazing, but I take forever. So, but anyway, so I've just been doing the cold emails for professors that I like. And this one guy actually really likes me, and he's been giving me more things. So I did a book chapter, and now I'm about to do a grant. So that's basically what I have to say for
That's
that.
wonderful. Something else I'm going to put out there is one of the biggest things, like if I put myself in a situation where I'm a student trying to get into a graduate program, I have a full-time job and I don't have the time to spend that much time. I'd rather hire someone to edit my work instead of edit or go to school and have somebody, review it. and I have the funds and the means available, the first thing I'm going to go is I'm going to do a Google search and I'm going to find dissertation editor in my area. So it better be on your internet profile. It better be on your website right off there. You know, when you're, and this is a big thing, when you have your websites or when you have your directory profiles, you have to think about what is the other person typing in? What is my client typing into that search bar? That my website has to have the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, this is key because we can put all the skills we have, but if the person is not typing in the list of skills that they're looking for, they're going to be typing in specifically a question. Where do I find a dissertation editor in genetics in my area? Or what? So your website has to be the answer to that Google question they're typing in. And that's fundamental. And that's going to save, I think, half of the time people find, the idea is that people find you, not that you have to go hunting for every single contact. You have to do that at the beginning. But if you can simplify that process because your website is already answering that question and your directory profile at EFA is answering that question, be as specific as you can be. And remember that your past experience from other jobs that you've had, for us, those of us that are moms, like being a mom can be so informative to a lot of the things that you're doing because you have the empathy, you know about time management, you know about priorities, you know, or a different set of priorities that somebody can relate to. Make your profile to be really individual instead of being too broad. Brittany? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I just kind of wanted to mention something that Michelle McRae said in the chat, which is that we need to be careful about kind of the ethics of editing for students, and that Editors Canada and the CIEP have some really good guidelines around that. I know it's something that different schools, different programs have varying approaches to it. And so that's just something to always keep on your radar, because
Okay.
there are just some nuances that you need to be, you need to make sure that it's okay in specific situations. I was telling Linda the other day, I had a doctor friend of mine who was in charge of evaluating applications to a very important program. And, you know, my sense had always been that you had to be very careful about editing student applications of any sort. And I wasn't too sure because, as I said, I'm not an academic editor. I wasn't too sure about that. And one of the things that she said to me was that, you know, if she could give advice to the people who were applying, it would be to have someone edit their applications, because she had a lot of people who were coming in who English was not their first language. She wanted to be able to really evaluate them based on their merit for what their skills were, and not have the language be a problem in between them. But that was her specific need as someone evaluating applications. I don't think that that's always the advice that students are given, you know, in a college or in an educational setting. So I would just say, for anyone who is coming into this, who is new to it, really talk to your colleagues, talk to some of the other editors you see here, kind of dig into that to make sure that you are doing it in a way that is like a best practice for your industry.
Yeah, Perrin, I'll go to you in a second. Another thing I want to say too, that I don't see a lot of people doing this, is if there's a job that comes to your inbox about academic editing, but it's not your area, just don't delete it. Think about who you can send that to. That might be up their alley. I'm constantly referring, there was something about somebody looking for a music editor that showed up on my LinkedIn profile evaluate. And I'm like, I don't even know the first thing about music, but I know 2 music editors that I just met in the last month through our coursework. I'd love to send them. So you forward that to somebody else. So don't let that's a great networking opportunity. I'm sure that your stuff, you know, your inbox gets bombarded with things that are not for you. If you know someone that it might be good for, just forward it. All it takes is just to forward and be like, hey, I saw this and I was thinking of you. And that, whether they take it or not, that's their thing. But you did that next step. You did the next step that you could to open that relationship up. So is it Perrin? Am I pronouncing it correctly, or Perrin?
Hi there, it's Perrin.
Perrin, nice to meet you, Perrin. Welcome.
Hi. So I'm an academic book editor, and I have one client that I got through a course that I took. The professor took a shine to me and introduced me. And one client's like not enough to live on. Like every summer I just start gasping. And I'm like, I just need like one more client, just to have like a couple books on the go. So I'm from Canada. I've emailed every book publisher in Canada. I have like contacted every managing editor that exists in this country, and like a third of them reply, maybe a quarter. And then those, like, friendly sort of harass them. But I'm like, I don't know, like there's no basis for trust. Like I'm just some guy in the ether contacting them. I don't know how to go from like, hey, here I am, here's my portfolio, please give me a chance. Like, because the only time I ever got work is because one person vouched for me, and I don't have that going forward to any other future work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really trying to figure it out.
And Karen, what kind of editing do you do?
It's mostly humanities, social science, for an academic press.
And is it like copy editing or proofreading or
Yeah.
developmental?
It's copy editing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so because I was thinking sometimes it depends on the type of editing that we're offering, because some things are just in-house. I would say if you're comfortable, like you could always broaden that net a bit and think about some of the editors in the US, if you would be comfortable working with a company in the US. Like even just on a freelance basis, because I think that I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't know how the pay would compare to where you're at right now, but it's something you could always work on. And then the other thing, I'm sure, I know Linda, I'll give her a chance because I'm sure she's got some good ideas. But one of the things I would also say, and this is kind of general, is, well, we always do talk about having things like your website, having that where it's showing testimonials, it is, putting you in your services in the best, most professional light. All of these things, whether it's social media, your profiles, your website, those are like references for you, right? It's what people do today for references. So always make sure that you have that where it needs to be. And the other thing I would say is, what are there conferences that you might be able to go to that might put you in the orbit of some of these publishers, or some people who are, whether they're professors or whomever, who are looking to write their own books and are looking for publishers? Because Linda and I have gone to, I guess, a couple of years now, the Independent Book Publishers Association. It's a US based organization, but it's a really good conference that they put on, where we're talking with publishers all the time. There's so many of them there, and they're looking for editors, they're looking for support, right? And so I think sometimes, especially when you're in a position where, like, you're not a fiction editor looking for fiction, indie authors, because otherwise there's like a whole bunch of places you could go to meet that particular client. And I think sometimes you just have to step back and maybe look at it from a different angle and think about, where can I meet those clients? What websites, what magazines, what journals can I be reading to kind of put myself in the mindset and get an idea of where they're active, so that I can put myself there.
Okay, can I go next?
Yes, I know.
Sorry.
So this reminded me what Brittany was saying. Brittany and I were always attending editor conferences. We're going to AFA, ACES virtually, what other skill can we, and then our book got nominated for this award with the Independent Book Publishers Association, which is a very big organization of independent book publishers. And because we self-published, we're like, wow, we got nominated. That's great. And then they contacted us that if we could be at the awards dinner at the conference. It was taking place in Orlando. I'm in, Los Angeles. Brittany's in Florida. We have budgets flying to Orlando and staying for 3 days for a publishing conference that, when we didn't consider ourselves publishers, was not in our budget. But they kind of were like, you should be there. It'd be nice to have you there since you're. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And So we went with the idea that we're going to go and talk to people about our book. And when we got there, and I remember the first day, like I got my badge, I walked into the room, into the main conference room, and I saw the presenters and the vendors. And it, as I was walking around, it dawned on me, everybody that was at the conference was a potential client or a potential referral for a client, because there were book cover designers. Book cover designers work with editors, and they work with publishing houses. There were companies offering international licensing of books. People that do law and international licensings work with editors, or sometimes need an editor in another country or that can edit in another language. There were people building websites for authors. Who's writing that content? That content needs to be edited, probably. And so all of a sudden, and then of course, not even talk about the speakers that were there. Everybody at some point in their line of work interacts with an editor at that conference, or has an editor on their client's team. There's an editor somewhere, everywhere. And so I realized that my shortcoming had always been that I'm going to the right conferences, but I could be going to a lot of other conferences that are right for me as well, that are not on my radar. And that's where my clients were. When I go to an editing conference, that's where my colleagues are, and where I might get referrals from work that they can't take on. But that's not going to be a new client. Usually the new client is going to come from these areas where editors are not hanging out. And let me tell you, at the IBPA conference, there must have been 500 people at the conference. Maybe there were 10 editors at that conference.
Yeah.
Maybe. And so it was like pole position for, the win there. And we picked up a lot of work. We met so many people. So sometimes thinking outside of the box, that's one thing. Another thing is, I would recommend meeting up. There's a lot of editors in this meeting. If somebody wants to reach out to Perrin and be like, hey, why don't we check each other's websites out? Let's look at our directory profiles. What do you think I'm missing? What do you think I should be adding? It's just always good to have another perspective. And then I refresh my profiles once a year, because either there's work that I don't want to do anymore, or I just took a new class and now I can do book mapping, and I want to make sure that that's on my profile. So getting that feedback from other editors, I think, is important. And then send me an email, Perrin, because I used to work with someone that does textbook publishing. They're a company that they outsource most of their work, but they do have a lot of in-house editors or proofreaders. They don't pay the best, but sometimes getting, if you're in a lull and you have a project that you can take on, that you can add to your resume, or and it's from Pearson or Longman or something, that's times I don't recommend getting the low paying jobs and doing those, but I only recommend doing those when you have nothing else on the radar, and just to get that experience and your name out there. So I'm a big advocate, for raising our rates and making sure that we're getting paid fair. And I'm going to post here one thing. I was able to entice to come speak at the EFA conference 2 editors from the Museum of the American Indian, the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian. I don't know how many of you were at the EFA conference, but they gave a phenomenal presentation, and we bonded. It was so much fun. They have a publications department. They're constantly hiring freelance editors if museums are your thing, or that kind of publication. But they told me about this conference that I'm going to put here in the chat. There is a National Museum Publishing Conference or seminar where all the museums of the country's publishing departments go to talk about. So even though you might not have anything to present there, to add, like, what a prime territory to talk to people and get to know people. So look for these publishing conferences of different industries, and where you can sneak in, maybe offer. My big thing is offer to volunteer at the registration desk, offer to volunteer handing out things, or offer to volunteer, because that'll give you a conference discount usually, and then you get to meet all these people and you get to build your network in a way that's genuine, that's you, and that's affordable. So that's kind of mine.
And as Linda is talking about this, I'm thinking this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. You have, what is your current network? What are your goals? And then what work do you need to do to make it? So I'm sorry, I always talk with my hands, so you can't see my hands, but imagine these 2 things in parallel, and then what can we do to help them intersect, so that then they're informing one another. So your network is helping you further those goals, and those goals are telling you who you need to be networking with. It's really very interconnected, and when we'll shift our viewpoint and see it that way, I think that makes it like much less intimidating, and our next steps become much more just like natural and intuitive. Like, oh, of course I would go to a conference where my ideal clients are going to be. And so, yeah, thank you, Linda. She always gives me the best ideas. So
Becky, yes.
Two things. I wanted to comment on that because my partner is a romance. She's a romance author and a romance reader, copy editor, all that. And she belongs to the National Romance Writers, and she belongs to Georgia's romance writing thing. So she goes to these things, and that's where we get a lot of our author clients, because she knows everybody. She's been doing this for so long. So, but I am trying to go to conferences involving other kind of writing, other kind of fiction, and other kinds of things like the EFA and stuff like that, and other conferences where I can learn some of these things. And the networking thing that you are doing today is just so awesome, and I'm really appreciative of it. And I will follow up on your books and stuff. And the only other question I have is, are you guys big on doing LinkedIn for connections?
Am I big? I think LinkedIn is a phenomenal platform. There are people that die by it. I am a participant. I join when it's convenient and when I have something of value to add, or when I can go and add something of value to somebody else's post. So if I'm going, my kind of philosophy for the last few years is that I don't have time for most of these things. I'm interested in Instagram, gardening, baking, things like that. So if I'm gonna use my social media time to pursue my networking, then it's gotta be, I'm gonna say something kind. I'm gonna try to be helpful. If I get tagged in a post, I will drop what I'm doing and I will immediately go and respond to that and participate, because somebody's taking the time to call me out or to invite me to say something. And I respect that very much. So I don't accept random LinkedIn invitations of people that want to connect with me.
Right.
Unless there's a note that says why they want to connect with me.
Right.
And so it's the same thing. I do reach out to connect with people that, blow me away, that I admire. I'm like, oh my God, I want to know what they're doing and why they're successful. And I do that a lot. There's a lot of people, and a lot of people are outside of the editing world that I want to connect with, because I want to be able to have that success in the editing world. And sometimes you might have to look for that inspiration outside and take what's useful to you and apply it to your career. So
well,
yes.
That's what I'm wondering. I've always been on LinkedIn as a lawyer, and now I've put, that I'm doing this and connected. We have a LinkedIn for the business. And I just wondered if it's a good place for me to make connections, for people looking for that kind of work.
I think so. As long as you're bringing value.
Right.
So somebody said to me once, why should I go see your LinkedIn page? Like, what are you offering? Like, why am I going to take 5 minutes of, I'm doing something else to go look at your LinkedIn page? And that's true. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to post, it's got to be a post that's going to bring value to somebody, that's going to help solve somebody else's problem.
Right.
Sometimes I'll share wins, because I think it's good to have some inspiration too. Like, oh my God, look what Linda did. I like that. But at the same time, I like to be able, I think what's attractive is that what problem can you help me solve, so that I can come and hang out and spend more than 30 seconds on your LinkedIn page.
Okay. Thank you.
I do want to show, this is the book, I finally found it. Respectful Querying with Nuance by Ebony Nassine Wilkins. There was a post, I just posted the link there on in the chat, I think. No. So it's in the chat. If you would like to save the chat, I'm going to invite you all to save the chat. I don't know if you've done that before, but save it so that you can go through it in case there's any notes or people that you wanted to connect with that were there. There were some people sharing their LinkedIn stuff, so definitely, keep that up. I think we're kind of out of time, but
yeah,
we want to make sure that we've addressed everything, or if anybody has anything else that they want to ask, maybe we'll take one more question. Brittany? Yes?
Sure. Any questions? Thoughts?
Sharon, would you like to say something? Sharon and I go way back.
Okay, there we are. I'm just curious about how people built their budgets for marketing and so on. I've been editing all my life, all my professional life as a museum curator. And then as working in schools, and then, you know, elementary, high schools, and then doing arts enrichment, and then just freelancing off and on. But suddenly I realized I could actually do editing as like a formal thing. So I've been editing friends, colleagues that I've known for years, most of them, and I've gotten some referrals through them. But now I'm thinking I need to establish a website. I need to be more intentional. So do you just decide you're going to spend this much money and do it? Or do you decide you have enough work now that through other ways to afford it? Basically my question.
We don't spend any money on marketing, Sharon. This is marketing to us, is hosting a meeting and talking about our experience and what we do.
Well, you have to establish a website that costs money.
Right. And we, sorry to, yeah.
No,
and we have, yeah, we do have a website. Linda and I each have a website for our own businesses. And then we have a website for our joint business, our networking for editors, which is actually the networking studio now. And what I would say is, just like we were talking about earlier, having a website, having your professional profile in different places, those are all very important because it's like having a recommendation. It's like having a referral. And so, yes, absolutely, those are important. But I think each of us have, we have figured out ways to do it in an affordable way, depending on where we are in our careers, where we are financially. And definitely you can do it in a very a very kind of a minimal but clean and effective way that is very affordable. Or you can go, I mean, obviously you can spend a huge amount of money on websites if you want. I think the most important thing is for you to think about, what do I need it to do? Do I just need it to sit there and show that, yes, I'm a real person, I am a real business, and these are my qualifications, and this is how you reach me? Or are you doing other types of outreach? Do you have a newsletter? Are you building a blog where you're educating your clients? How much do you need it to do at this point? And if you already have work in other places, you may not need it to do a whole lot right now, and you can wait till you have a budget for that. But like Linda said, for us, many people, including us, don't love doing like sales and marketing. And I think that if you put your energy into creating this network and, you know, creating spaces where you can be yourself and really connect with others, I think that you can accomplish a lot of the same thing, and maybe in better ways, and in a way that is in line with what you have to give financially or otherwise at each different level. So yeah, we both have profiles. We both will guest blog. We do presentations and things, but we don't really do just straight up marketing and advertising as such. I think Louise Hornby, whenever we sent her our book, we sent her our book before we published it, and asked her for if she would kindly please read it and give us if she'd be comfortable giving us a blurb or something. And one of the things she said, which I really loved, was that you're doing the same kind of work, like we're doing the same type of thing that she is, in terms of when she talks about marketing, but we're doing it through a networking lens. I think that lens is much more approachable. uncomfortable when you look at it, when you realize that networking can be fun, it can be natural, it doesn't have to be scary. So that's my long-winded response.
Just the one thing I wanted to say was I am in the process of reading, I think, her second book, Louise Harvey, about marketing. She is really good. You know, if you really need help with marketing, along with what you are doing, the two together for me are great.
Yeah, Louise Harvey's phenomenal. Like that's who
She's
we
great.
aspire to be as one day. So
She's something, that's for sure.
everyone, I do have to run out, but I'm gonna leave my email address here in the chat. It was so nice meeting everyone. If you'd like to be notified, we do want to have a group of academic editors work through the book and maybe join us for that coursework. Send us an email, let us know so we can let you know when that's happening. Insightfuleditor.com.
I put it in there as well, Linda.
Oh, you did? Okay, perfect. It was so nice meeting all of you, and thank you for allowing us to kind of speak on a subject that maybe we know about, but not so much as with academic editing. So yes.
And thank you
That's
for
great,
waiting for
thanks.
us too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. And
You
then
too.
can you stay for a second while I wrap up the meeting here?
Sure.
Okay, let me see. I'm going to stop the recording first.
Shot. Okay, all right, I'm gonna get out.